Hey there, paper geeks and glitter nerds. It's Jen and the Crazy Geek Crafter. I am revisiting a tool I made earlier. It was a wreath. I called it a helper, some called it a builder. Beloved child has many names, as a saying in Danish goes. The point is, the one I had I made with dies, and I needed one that fit with the front of a card. So I used my ScanNCut to make this 2.0 version of my Wreath helper, and I am going to have to remedy a few things about it. I already made a 3.0 version ready to cut on my ScanNCut, but for now this works. There are a few kinks, and there always are. I wanted it to have a bottom, and I made these holes so you can easily get the paper out. And I wanted it to be double layer of cardstock, so that the paper wouldn't, or the cardstock wouldn't slide out too easily. So now I'm going to test it out and do some modifications. First of all, I need the paper in here to fit, because if the paper can't move and I tape the helper to the paper, then the helper won't move if the paper can't move. Did that make any sense? Sorry, I'm a bit under the weather from some illness. Still under the weather from it. But we're trying this anyway, so I can get this video out on time. I make 2 pieces of Gummiapan cardstock here for testing out the Wreath, and they'll be turned into cards. But to start with, just the 2 to test out if it works right. I got inspired by all these stamps that came with my Missees, and I really do want to make some wreaths for Christmas cards. I really love the way it looks, so this was a perfect opportunity to try out the Missees stamps and make a new version of the Wreath helper in time for Christmas. There are many of these tools out there that you can buy. I've seen some very ginormous ones where they're like, is it 18 turns or something, like 16 or 18 turns on the helper, and then there are these simpler ones where there's only that's still a lot, only 8 turns, like the one I made here. I am testing out a version pretty soon which will have 12 turns, so I'm excited about that. But first I had to make this one work, just to make sure, because the more turns you have, the smaller images you need. So I also need to, go through my stamps and find out what I can actually use on a wreath with that many turns. So now I can actually close my Misty. I completely forgot about telling you what I was doing in the picture. I had to cut out not just for the Misty to be able to close, because it went over. That won't be a problem with the 3.1 version, since there's another thing I need to fix. You see here, I have a bit of trouble with the last few turns of this, where the cardstock is in the way of the closing mechanism. For this first wreath, I'm just going to cut off the corner. I can find another way to use it without the full panel, so that won't bother me too much, but I do need to figure out how to use a full card front in this Misty with a wreath builder. So that's the next, so to speak, challenge, how I can remedy that, and then those changes will be made to my digital version, so that I can always make a new one if I lose it or if it breaks. But for now, cutting off one corner actually was enough to make this work. And I can finish my wreath. I'm using distress inks. They give a very splotchy look, especially on brand new stamps like these. But I do like the watercolor feel of it. I apologize for all the sniffling. I just noticed it. Like I said, I'm getting over a cold, or maybe I still just have the cold. I'm not quite sure where in the process I am. But the point is, the kind of ink I have most colors of is Distress inks. I have the tiny cubes, they don't take up too much space, and I love the variety and the price point. I am trying to build up a dye ink collection, but it's taking far longer than my patience allows. So I often use Distress inks even though they're not actually made for stamping. That's why I love my Misty tool, so that I can stamp 2, 3, 4 as many times as I need to get a good coverage, get the color I want, because the more you stamp actually also the color gets darker. But I like the splotchy look, and this watercolor effect it almost gives. Yeah. So let's try and fix this Wreath builder. While I was stamping, I was trying to figure out how I can solve this. So I figured I have to cut off a piece on one side of my helper here. Just 0.5 centimeter. That should be enough. And then if I also move my helper into the middle, instead of having it in the corner, I should be able to close the Misty around the paper, like so. So now it's version 2.2, since I made 2 changes. And now I can make another wreath and see if it works out for me. The problem with bigger stamps is that you often put them too far in on your card, and that makes the wreath very small. That's why I'm starting over here and I'm placing my flower further out on the paper to make a bigger wreath and maybe have space for some smaller items in between the flowers. Now this one I'm stamping in my favorite things hybrid ink, so that I can color it with my Shinhan markers or with the Distress inks, my Sig markers, whatever I want. I wanted some versatility, and this one is more of an outline stamp than the other ones that I used that were more solid, and therefore if I just stamped them in black I would have a black wreath. That would probably be nice too, but that wasn't what I was going for. So here I'm trying to place the smaller flower and it just doesn't work for me. So let's try and find something else to put in here. The butterfly, even the small butterfly, seems to, in my opinion, to be too big. So let's sleep on it, shall we? I went through my stash in the morning and I found a set that also had outlines and leaves. And I think the thickness of the lines are quite similar. I am not completely sure, but I think the brand of this stamp is also made in the Netherlands, just like Missees are. They're from Studio Light, which is a stamp brand coming from the Netherlands. So it's quite. I found it was a funny coincidence that they matched actually pretty well. They may be a tiny bit thicker, but it may also be because the leaves are that much smaller that it looks that way. While you have been watching all my bigger projects from the summer, my folio and the mouse wedding, I was on holiday, which means there's another folio coming up. But I don't think I'll get to air it until next year, since the rest of the year is pretty much Halloween and Christmas. It's funny, all the birthday cards I make in the fall, they end up being edited and sent out on YouTube in the spring, because I can't fit them in. Otherwise, that does mean that I get a bit of a break during the spring after all the Christmas things, and that is actually kind of nice. It is. It's a hard time because I have my physical limits, and my mind hasn't quite caught up with the fact that I can't just go at 150% constantly. I can't even go at 80% constantly, but the brain is slow compared to the body. So I decided to watercolor this wreath, or somewhat watercolor. It looks like watercolor. The process is like watercoloring, but I think technically the Distress inks just act like watercolors and are water-based, of course. But compared to other brands that I'm assuming pretty inferior. But I like the look, especially this very blue-green of the Evergreen Bough. It's very pretty. And I just took my time going around the reef, trying to relax a bit, just enjoying the craft. After all the bigger projects, this was very nice to just slow down and do something simple. With my wreaths finished, colored, it's time to make some decisions about what to do with them. And of course I wanted them to be cards. I need more birthday cards in my stash, for when friends come over and need one, or all of a sudden I have to go to a birthday that I didn't plan for. So the whole one, so to speak, the one I hadn't cut the corner of, I can just mount on the front of this card. It might have looked better with a bit of a border with a color underneath, but I wasn't sure I had a purple deep enough and didn't want to ink blend out. I was getting a bit tired at this point, even though I had a break between the coloring and this. I was mentally worn at this point. But I did know that it needed some glitter, some bling. So I pulled out my jewels here, and I'm going to put them on the card when I've mounted it on the card base. And I keep finding smudges on this card. It's very annoying, can't figure out where they come from. So I keep going back in with my sand eraser to try and make sure the white is white. But I need a sentiment, and I'm going to cut it with this die. I really love this font. I really hate the die. The yellow coating has a tendency to come off, so I have a black sentiment with yellow smudges. Not smudges, the tiny yellow specks all over. So I wrapped the paper in some, this is kind of like baking paper, baking parchment, to try and protect it from the yellow flaking off. It's a bit tedious, but yeah. The other problem with this die is that there are so many tiny pieces of cardstock. I'm going to have to take a brush and try and get it off that way, but every time I use it I remember why I hate it, and then half a year goes by and I've forgotten how annoying this is, because the font is very lovely. It's just all of those little black things and the yellow getting on my cardstock. It's just annoying. And like I said, it's a very pretty font. I really like it. It says congratulations. It's easy to handle. It's not too thick and not too thin. I can get glue on it without much problem. It's easy to place. It doesn't bend too easily. I say that and bend out the ending there, but it's just a lot of hassle when you actually die cut it, and that's annoying. So maybe it's time to retire it. Put it somewhere where I can't see it, can't use it. Sell it off. Make it someone else's problem, I don't know. So, just need a tittle for the eye. And that was troublesome. But not the worst thing about this, actually. So, now that has a sentiment. And you should be able to, clean up all the little black fluffy things. And mount it on the card base. I do actually forget to cut off the little bit of excess at the bottom. I'll have to go in and do that later. I don't know why I forgot. Quite possibly it's something people call brain fog. It happens when you're in pain and trying to function anyway. I wasn't sure of the size of the gem I wanted, so I tried them out without gluing them, and then I figured the middle size was the better one for this card. And because they're iridescent, they pick up the purple and green, and I think it's a lovely addition to this card. Now what to do about the other one? I could have cut it down a bit and mounted it on a color, like I like I said about the other one, but I figured I'd cut this one out just for some fun. It was not that difficult and it didn't need to be that precise, so I figured it was a good solution. And there was something about this, the splotchiness of the colors that just screamed for Kraft cardstock. So that's what I'll do. I'll mount a piece of Kraft cardstock onto the card base. There we go. And now I can see that I really need to cut out the inside. I'm just going to roughly cut out the middle with my knife and then do the squiggly thing with my scissors. I think that's easier to do with scissors. It's not the best because this is a long scissors. I need some smaller ones to correct the few mistakes I have, like this one. There we go. Just making a nice finish on my cutting. And I really feel it goes with the Kraft. The colors I picked here. Let's see. Mowed Lawn, Forest Moss, and Villainous Potion. Potion? It's not poison, it's potion. I found a big congratulations here from a Danish stamp maker called Gittes. I'm sorry, the dog is snoring. She's called Gittes and has her own brand alongside keeping just about everything else there is out there to buy. Maybe not everything, because I can't get Newton's Nook or Stamping Bill. Gittes, if you hear this, please bring them in. Since the UK left the EU, it's been troublesome to get some of these more special brands, in my opinion. Stamping Bill specifically has a very distinguished line to their drawings, but they're so nice. I really like them. I wish I had more of them, but I don't. I think I have 3 different Bellas, and then I have some of the animals, and that's it. That's all I got to buy before a Brexit came along. There are a few companies in Europe who take home some of the Stamping Bellas and some of the Newton Nooks, but no one takes everything. And if I have to buy something from outside the country, there's more of a postage, and then I want to be able to buy the things I actually want and not just whatever they have. So I'm gonna pop off my wreath here. I didn't mention this, but I decided to use the Versamark to stamp the congratulations to make it kind of muted, and that meant that I kind of had to bring in the vintage photo to darken the edges and also the sides of the wreath so it didn't look so stark white. I think it really worked out well. Here are my 2 wreaths on my cards. I will be working on the wreath helper behind the scenes, but for now this is it. I hope you enjoyed it and that you'll be back next week for another video. Until then, I hope you'll be having a good day, evening or night.